Everything went silent. Not the kind of silence you hear in a quiet room. This was deeper, thicker, like the entire world had been muffled under a heavy blanket. My body lay still on the hospital bed, surrounded by frantic voices and cold fluorescent lights. I knew something was wrong, but I wasn't afraid. Strangely, I felt free. In the blink of an eye, I found myself hovering above my body. The doctors were shouting codes and pressing on my chest, trying to pull me back. But I just watched, detached. A wave of peace washed over me, pure, unconditional peace. That's when I saw it. A presence. It wasn't a person exactly. More like a being made of light and warmth, vibrating with love. No face, no form, but I knew it knew me, deeply. "You're not ready to leave," it said, though its mouth never moved. "Before you return, you must remember. We have to show you who you are, who you've been." Before I could speak, the world around me dissolved. The hospital, the machines, the people. It all vanished. I was moving through something. A tunnel of memories that didn't feel like mine, but somehow were. "You will live 7 lives," the being said. 7 versions of yourself. And when it ends, you'll understand. That's when it began. I opened my eyes to sunlight, soft, golden and warm against my skin. The air smelled of wildflowers and soil. I looked down and saw bare feet, small and dusty. I was a girl, maybe 14. My hands were rough, calloused from work. I wore a simple linen dress, and the wind tugged at my tangled brown hair. I was somewhere in the countryside, Europe, maybe. But centuries ago, I could feel it in the stillness, in the simplicity. Life was hard, but quiet, peaceful. I carried a basket, and my body moved on its own, as if it remembered what to do. Each step felt familiar, though I'd never walked this land before. I was someone else, but I felt her thoughts, her hopes, her weariness. She loved the earth. She talked to the wind when no one was around. Her parents were kind but tired. Her village was small and surrounded by fear of illness, of outsiders, of the unknown. But she had dreams, even if they had no name. Then one day, it happened. Soldiers, fire, screams. I held my little brother's hand as we ran into the woods, breathless, but I knew. This life was ending. A sharp pain in my chest, the feeling of cold seeping in. I looked up through the trees and whispered a prayer to a god I barely understood. Then, darkness. And just like that, I was pulled from her, back into the light. When the light faded, I was standing in mud. Heavy armor clung to my body, soaked with sweat and blood. I was a man this time, tall, broad-shouldered, with a sword in my hand and rage in my heart. I could feel the weight of lives taken. My name was Arik. I was a warrior. The sky above was dark with smoke, and the sound of battle echoed all around me. Metal clashing, men screaming, horses crying out. I didn't fight for glory. I fought because I was told it was right. Because my father had, and his father before him. But deep down, Arik was tired. Not just physically, his soul was exhausted. He had seen too much, done too much. One night, alone by the fire, I watched my hands tremble. Not from cold, but from something worse. Doubt. I remembered the eyes of a young enemy soldier I had spared once. A boy, no older than 16. That moment haunted me more than any death. Then came the final battle. An arrow pierced my chest as I charged forward. I collapsed onto the earth. I had fought so hard to defend, and in those last seconds, I didn't see victory or pride. I saw a field of flowers. I saw peace. As blood filled my lungs, I felt myself being lifted, pulled from the pain, from the armor, from Arik. And again, I was in the presence of the light. One path ends, the being said, but the soul continues. This time I opened my eyes to the sound of coughing, deep, raw, and coming from my own lungs. I was in a small room with cracked walls and a single window that let in the orange glow of a setting sun. My chest ached. My limbs were weak. I was a child, a girl, maybe 7 or 8. My name was Mira. I was in India, sometime in the 1940s. The air smelled of spices, dust, and something else. Illness. I had been sick for a long time. Tuberculosis. My mother sang to me quietly, sitting on the floor, with tears in her eyes. She knew, and I did too, but I wasn't afraid. There was a strange peace in Mira, something ancient. She spent her days watching light patterns on the wall, imagining they were angels. Her body was fragile, but her soul was bright. Too bright for this world, perhaps. One night she whispered to her mother, "I'll come back as a river." Her mother didn't understand, but I did. When Mira's breathing stopped, I felt myself rise, not in panic, but in surrender. Her little body faded, and I floated above the house, the city, the sky. I could feel her presence like a ripple on water. She had left behind love. That was all she ever carried. Then again the light. The being waited for me. It didn't speak this time. It only placed a hand, if you could call it that, over where my heart would be. Warmth, stillness, and then the next life called. I opened my eyes in darkness. Heavy chains clinked as I moved. My wrists were raw, my ankles bruised. I was in the belly of a ship, the air thick with salt, sweat, and despair. I was a woman, young, strong, but broken. My name was Adana. Africa had been my home. I remembered the drums, the laughter, the sun on my skin. Then came the raiders, strangers with fire and ropes. They took everything, my village, my family, my freedom. Now I was property. I don't know how long the voyage lasted. Days, weeks. Time didn't exist in that place. Only pain. I sang to survive. Not with my voice, but in my mind. Old songs. Songs of rain and harvest. Songs my mother taught me. They reminded me I was still human. When we reached land, I was sold like an object. The years that followed were filled with cruelty, labor, silence. But deep inside, Adana never let go of her dignity. She held onto it like a flame in a storm. Then came the moment. One night, I ran. I didn't get far. A shot rang out. My body hit the ground. I looked up at the stars, so many, so free. And as my last breath slipped away, I felt something. Not fear, not pain, just release. Then, as before, the darkness gave way to light. The being was there again, watching, holding space for all that I had endured. You carried strength across lifetimes, it said. But there is more to see. And just like that, I was gone again. This time, I awoke to stillness, not the kind found in death, but in discipline. I was sitting cross-legged on a cold stone floor. My head was shaved. My hands rested gently in my lap. I was a man, a monk. Somewhere high in the mountains, Tibet, maybe. My name was Tenzin. I had taken a vow of silence. The world I lived in was simple. Monastery walls, the rhythm of bells, the sound of wind sweeping through prayer flags. We rose with the sun and meditated until our minds became like mirrors, clear, still, reflective. But silence doesn't mean emptiness. Within it, I discovered entire worlds. I remembered lives I hadn't lived, until now. I saw suffering as a river, always moving, and learned not to cling to joy or fear. Tenzin had no desire for fame or power, only understanding. One morning during meditation, something shifted. I felt my breath stop, not in panic, but in surrender. My body remained seated, but I was elsewhere, expanding, dissolving into the space between thoughts. A silence deeper than any I'd known embraced me, and in that silence, the being returned. No words passed between us, only presence, only knowing. "You have touched truth," it said, "but your journey is not over." And like a bell echoing through the mountains, I was drawn into the next life, carried by stillness into something louder. I opened my eyes to glass and steel. A city buzzed below me through the floor-to-ceiling windows of a high-rise office. I wore an expensive suit. My watch cost more than most people earned in a year. I was powerful, respected, feared. My name was Daniel, and I was lost. To the world, I had everything: cars, wealth, influence. But inside, I was hollow. I chased status the way drowning men chase air. I silenced guilt with distractions, noise, deals, affairs, ambition. I thought I was winning. Until my body betrayed me, the diagnosis came fast. Aggressive. Terminal. Suddenly, the world I built meant nothing. My money couldn't save me. The people I used disappeared. I was alone, with only time and regret as company. In the final weeks, I stared at my own reflection and asked, who did I become? The answer was silence. But in that silence, something broke open. I began writing letters to people I hurt, to the child I never knew how to love, to myself. I donated everything, not to earn redemption, but to finally let go. When the moment came, I welcomed it. As my last breath faded, I didn't see darkness. I saw light, gentle, forgiving. The being stood before me once more. "You've learned what power cannot buy," it said. "Now, one more life." And with that, I was falling, again, this time, towards something I had never expected. I didn't open my eyes this time. There were no eyes to open. I was awareness, pure, untouched. I existed in a warm, rhythmic world, surrounded by the heartbeat of a mother I'd never meet. I was a soul preparing to be born. And yet, I knew I wouldn't be. I was never meant to. This life was brief, a spark, a promise. My soul had chosen this form not to live long, but to deliver something. An unseen gift. My presence had shifted something deep within the woman who carried me. She had lost hope, but in carrying me, she found it again. She would go on to create beauty in the world, to raise children, to heal others. All because she once carried me, and I loved her. From this in-between place, I felt her grief, but I also felt her strength. I whispered to her through dreams. I wrapped around her heart like light in the darkness. And then I let go. I returned to the space between lives, where time does not exist, where lessons are threads, weaving through centuries. The being awaited me. It radiated something different this time. Reverence. "You've seen love in all its forms," it said. "You are ready." But ready for what? I wanted to ask. Instead, I was shown a mirror, not of my face, but of every life, every version of me. And then, the final truth. I stood before the mirror of souls. It didn't reflect one face, but 7. The girl who ran from fire, the warrior drenched in blood, the child who whispered to angels, the woman in chains, the monk in stillness. The man who lost everything. The unborn spark. They were all me, and yet I was more than all of them combined. Each life had been a thread in a vast tapestry, woven by love, suffering, choices, and grace. I saw how pain passed from one life to another, how forgiveness in one lifetime healed wounds in another. Nothing was wasted, not a single tear, not a single breath. And then I understood. Reincarnation wasn't punishment, it was mercy, a chance to grow through contrast, to become whole by living every side of the human story. The being looked at me, not as a judge, but as a guide. You are the lesson and the learner, it said. The seed and the bloom. You are never alone, not even in death. And just like that, I felt everything at once. Every heartbeat I'd ever known, every goodbye, every beginning. Tears streamed down my face, not from sorrow, from awe, because I realized I wasn't being sent back as punishment or reward. I was being sent back because I chose to return, to love deeper, to live wiser, to remember. The light began to fade, not into darkness, but into form. I felt myself falling, gently, like a feather caught in a slow wind. The sensation of weight returned. A heartbeat, breath, limbs, gravity. I was back in my body, still, fragile, trembling. The hospital room, voices, gasps. "She's back!" someone cried. But I wasn't the same. How could I be? I had lived 7 lives in the space of 1 hour, or maybe outside of time altogether. I had died as a stranger to myself, and returned as someone who had seen eternity from within. For weeks, I couldn't speak about it, not because I was afraid no one would believe me, but because I didn't have the words. How do you explain being a warrior, a child, a slave, a monk, a ghost, and a soul unborn, all in the same breath? Eventually, I stopped trying to explain. I started living differently. I see people now, not as strangers, but as stories, as souls on journeys I'll never fully know. I love more gently. I forgive faster. I cherish silence. I pray without words, and sometimes when I sit alone beneath the stars, I hear the being again. Not with ears, but within. A whisper. Remember who you are, and live accordingly. I don't know how many lives I have left, but I know this one. This one is sacred,